Let's roll all morning long.
All right, final hour of the program. It is 9:03, according to our clock here in the studios of News Radio WRVA. You're listening to Richmond's Morning News. My name is Rich Herrera. Thank you so much for being a part of the program. Now, I'll be candid here. We got an opportunity to count down to USA 250, to our semi-quincentennial. And we kind of looked around, what can we do, what can we do, what can we do? And I saw Jonathan Turley speak at the Library of Virginia. And I'm a big fan of Jonathan Turley. Bought his book, trying to read it. It's a little over my head, but I try to read it. And got a chance to meet him, spend some time with him, went to his autograph signing. And during his speech, during his talk at the Library of Virginia, he said, in troubling times, lean into the founding fathers, lean into their vision, lean into those documents, because that's what makes America, America. And it made so much sense to me. Right now, we lean so far away. So we had the opportunity that Dr. Murray Sabrin said, hey, listen, I'll come on with you and we'll talk about the United States of America, the founding fathers, the principles, and leaning back into those. Like, great, let's do this. Now, never would I have dreamed that it would be this insightful every week to bring on Dr. Murray. So as I'm getting excited as we get to USA 250, I'm also getting a little melancholy because we've had such a great lesson in history, the vision, our country, our founding fathers, our founding documents. I'm almost like a kid on Christmas morning. I'm waiting for it to get here, but I'm sad because the whole holiday season will go for naught after the 4th of July. But we'll continue to lean in, and Dr. Murray's always going to be a friend of this program. He's joining us right now on the News Radio WRVA hotline. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, given that we're coming close to one of the most important dates in history and one of the most important celebrations, I think, since some of us remember the 200th anniversary in 1976 when the ship sailed up New York Harbor, which is a place that I arrived in America in 1949.
Wow, that's amazing. What do you remember about the bicentennial?
Well, interestingly enough, we were visiting my sister-in-law and her husband in upstate New York, which from New York City was not that far away, in I think it was Dutchess County. And I was in the basement area watching the celebration on TV.
Yeah.
And I was in graduate school at the time, full-time graduate school student, studying economics and geography. And I just remember I think the coming together of the people, because remember, this is a year after we exited Vietnam. People don't remember that.
Yeah.
We left Vietnam in a hurry in April of 1975. That iconic picture of a helicopter at the U.S. Embassy taking people out of Vietnam because the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong were overrunning Saigon. And I just said to myself, boy, this should be the last war that the United States is ever involved in, because we were there, 58,000 American troops died, 1 million Vietnamese, and it was just a horrible situation, the tearing apart of the country from the mid-'60s to the early '70s. And I said, hopefully this will be the end of our going into countries trying to impose upon them what we think is the right thing for them to do. And of course, since then, we've been involved in other countries around the world, and it hasn't worked out too well for us.
Yeah, and I go back and forth with that, because if the U.S. steps back, there's a vacuum that's going to be filled by someone else who will not have our best intentions. And it's just a double-edged sword when you look at the big world global stage. But let's get to what we want to talk about today, which is well, it's pretty special, especially for Virginians, because this week, what happened back in 1776?
Well, the Virginia Council put together the Virginia Declaration of Rights, June 12th, 1776. So I would recommend that the governor of the state and the legislature get together and make a state holiday June 12th every year, because the Declaration of Rights that Virginia put together, the 16 passages, were the foundation for Jefferson's, for the Declaration of Independence and our Bill of Rights. So here you have in one document 16 paragraphs that explain and assert people have natural rights, that government is instituted in order to protect those rights, not to give rights that people don't naturally have. And when you read this document, you've got to say to yourself, these people were really breaking away from the view of the world at the time that the monarchies and other autocracies were the way to go. But the people said, no, in Virginia, we have fundamental rights. And this was the great revolution, the philosophical revolution that took place. And Virginia led the way with this declaration that Jefferson embraced and incorporated it. And then it became part of the Bill of Rights. So Virginia has something to celebrate. And I wish more Americans realize that the Declaration of Rights from Virginia in July 12, 1776 is the real foundation of this country.
What was the most radical part of that Virginia document?
I'm looking over it now, and I think number 13, talking about a well-regulated militia composed of the body of the people, trained to arms in the proper, natural, and safe defense of a free state. And here's the other point, which is something that the founders envisioned, but it hasn't been implemented. It said standing armies in time of peace should be avoided as dangerous to liberty. That is a very powerful statement about what the government should do regarding defense. And the founders, I think many of them said, we don't need a standing army. We need the militias at the state level to protect us from any possibility of invasion. And that if we are invaded, then we can get the militias together, and that becomes our army. We don't need a separate army in order to defend the American people.
So let me make sure I got this correct in the Constitution. We raise an army and we maintain a navy.
Yes, that's what it said there. But I think what the founders envisioned in the Constitution was that it would be so small relative to the size of the country, but the state militias would be the most important defense against any sort of intrusion into the country. And this, I think, is something that has been lost on members of Congress and presidents since then, because the founders were very wary of a standing army because they just fought the British Army, a standing army, and the British Army was at the beck and call of the king,
right?
And so when you have a standing army, it's the central government that can use the army in very nefarious ways.
What was the move? What was the item that moved us towards a standing army? Was it the Tripoli pirates? Was it something else that said, wait a minute, we are going to have foreign intervention, War of 1812, whatever you want to say. We do need to have more of a robust defense than calling the militia and calling the Minutemen to bear arms.
We have to remember there were people during the Revolution, as we talked about previously, who wanted to maintain ties with Britain, and they saw Britain as sort of the prime example of how a nation state should be constructed. And of course, Britain had a very powerful standing army, and so there were some people during the Revolutionary period and the post period that said, hey, we need an army because America is too important to be left to just the militias. In addition, as we've seen, you can use an army to go overseas that may not be in the best interest of the American people. And that's really the key. Is going to war overseas or intervening in other countries in the best interest of the American people, not the phrase national security, because national security begins at the border. And some people say it should end at the border. We should not go try, as John Quincy Adams said, to fight monsters overseas. We should just make sure that the borders are intact, that anyone that tries to invade us will be repelled, and that we will be free and independent to do what we do best, which is to interact with each other in a very peaceful way.
And that's where you go back between guns versus butter. If I spend all my money on guns, everybody will starve. Yeah. If I spend all my money on butter, everybody will be fed, but someone's going to come take our butter eventually. Yeah. So it's a combination of both. We should have this talk after the 4th of July. I think it's fascinating. I understand, boy, if you could pull everything back and just take care of everything in the United States, it'd be one thing. But I think in this day and age and the way the world is, you would soon be the prey of other countries that would fill the void around the world that the United States has projection of power. So, you know, the whole idea of isolationism versus non-isolationism, what you saw leading into World War I and World War II, would you ever want to repeat that? And I think it's a fascinating conversation. And you and I will have to have that discussion coming up if people want to read something about these founding Virginians documents that really sparked the fire of liberty that we have right now, what would you suggest someone read?
Well, they can Google the Virginia Declaration of Rights, and I'm looking at the primary document. It's in my hand. I downloaded it and printed it out. And again, it is really the foundation of the American state, or I should say, the American people's relationship with the government. And it's just a magnificent document. It was the basis of the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights. So you have one document crafted in Virginia by George Mason, who drafted the original declaration, and then it was tweaked. But it just summarizes the most important revolutionary idea in the history of the civilization. Human beings are free and independent people, and we have the right to govern ourselves and appoint people or elect people that will do the things that we cannot do individually, which is protect us from invasion. And that, I think, is really lost on the American people today, because most people think that the government is a social welfare agency. And that's not what the founders envisioned for America, for fighting a revolution to create a welfare state in America.
Remember, it used to be the king was anointed from God to lead his people, and then we skip the king, and we have inalienable rights that are given by our Creator, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It kind of changed the whole world. We are going to have another discussion, though. How in the world did one little colony in Virginia, have so many men with such great vision that have led us 250 years later? That's a discussion for another day. Dr. Murray Sabrin joins us. If people want to find you and your writings online, where do they go?
MurraySabrin.substack.com, and I post my podcast there, Life, Health, Wealth, and the Pursuit of Happiness. And we're having two great interviews this week. One is by an entrepreneur not far from you in North Carolina, who built a business from nothing to $1 billion business in 40 some odd years. A great story. And I'm reading his biography right now.
Oh, come on. There's no such thing as the American dream. Just ask AOC. I don't know. Okay, stop, Rich. Don't go there. All right. Dr. Murray, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rich. Have a good week.
All right. God bless you. Thank you. Dr. Murray Sabrin joining us here on News Radio WRVA. I so enjoy these conversations with him. Just kind of reminds me of where we came from and where we're heading as you look back at their visions. Let me remind everybody, today's show is brought to you by Luster by A.